The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today. Well, welcome to the journey. My name is Kevin Polke, and we have a special guest with us today, Mary Votava. And that name may sound familiar because her husband Nick has been on the journey a couple different times. But we're here to talk about Rockford Barbell, but also about a special program that Mary does with Rockford Barbell. So, Mary, welcome to the journey.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. So Mary, before we jump into your story as well as your story with Rockford Barbell, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, but maybe starting with when you have an opportunity to have fun, what do you do for fun?
Sure. For fun, I love to spend time outside in nature. My husband and I really love to go camping and hiking. In 2020, we started an adventure where we're trying to hike the highest point in every state. And we have about 15 that we've done. This past summer, we hiked the highest point in Colorado, and that was very intense with the altitude, but it was a weird type of fun that we enjoy. So yeah, we like to spend time outdoors. I also love to spend time doing yoga and spending time with family and friends as well.
Perfect. Well, now this summer when you guys did the peak in Colorado,
Yes.
was that the highest peak you guys have done?
Yes, it was. It was our first 14er of the adventure. Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember exactly how 14,000, do you remember the details?
I do not. No, Nick would be great for that. I just know it was over 14. We had also done Utah a few years ago, and that was a little under 14. But that one was challenging as well, even though it wasn't 14,000 feet.
Yeah, well, there is no. I know when I did my first 14,000 foot mountain out in Colorado, Mount Yale. That yeah, that altitude piece is that's no joke. We did not get acclimated. We weren't there long enough to get acclimated, and that
Yeah.
just made the 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 trip much the walk much and the hike much worse.
Yeah, yeah. And so when we did Utah a few years back, we drove to Utah and kind of just went for it. And with that one, we had to hike 8 miles to where we were camping. And then the next day, we went to the peak and back and then hiked another night and came back. And yeah, it was absolutely brutal. We did not give ourselves time to acclimate. But then with this trip, we ended up staying in Leadville, Colorado, which is right outside of Mount Albert. And so we spent about a day and a half there. Leadville's a really cute town, lots of restaurants, lots of bars, lots of shops, and we that seemed to help. And going up, the killer for Mount Albert was just how steep it is. And then on the way back down is when the altitude really started to hit us because we were like, oh, going down will be easier. It's not it's not the up part, but because we had that altitude piece finally hitting us, it was brutal, but we made it. We were questioning it for a while, but we did make it.
Well, to your point, we don't think, most people don't think, I didn't think that coming down the mountain was going to be as difficult as it was, but it's a lot as far as like, I remember for me, my feet, my toes,
Yes.
my quads, it just seemed, I wasn't necessarily, I don't recall being as much out of breath as I was going up, but I just remember it was definitely more, there was more discomfort.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, yeah. And going up, it was. and this is probably where my yoga training has really helped, like taking I was very focused on just moment by moment and being in the present and literally one step at a time. And sometimes they were very baby steps. And it was also about I had to really make sure I was listening to my body, like when I needed to take a break. And same for the way down. It looked very different physically, like you said, going down. But yeah, it was a great test of being in the moment and listening to your body's needs.
So, well, now your background is, I mean, I know you're working for RPS right now,
Yes.
Rockford Public School System. How long have you been an educator? Yeah, and how did you get into being an educator?
Sure. So this is my 11th year working in Rockford Public Schools. I've been at East High School the whole time. Um, for 8 years, I think I was a English teacher. I taught primarily sophomore English. I dabbled in junior English as well, and then I also taught English as a second language. East is really cool because we have a newcomer program, which this is for students who are new to the United States and they are learning English, and some of them are in school for the first time. We have students from Africa, Middle East, from Asia, and our Spanish speaking countries as well. So I was teaching them after they've been out of the newcomer program, so they had some level of English. And that was a really beautiful, fun experience teaching ESL. Um, so that's my background. And then in 2021, 2022 school year, that was the school year where a lot of students were back in the building, and teachers were seeing behavior in a light that we've never really seen it after the pandemic and after students were at home for a significant amount of time. And it was, I was I was unsure of how to be a good teacher anymore, because the behavior needs were so high, and I just felt like I was not doing a good job, and that just like felt led to a lot of self doubt on my end. And so I decided that I either need to leave this profession or do something to try to change my mindset. And I had been thinking about there's a program called Breathe for Change, which is a yoga teacher program specifically for educators. And my principal, he is a wonderful person, and he supported it, and he paid for me to do this yoga teacher training, and it was a 6 month program. And so I started that in January of 2022, and I graduated in June 2022. So as I was learning different mindfulness strategies and social emotional learning strategies in my classwork, I was able to practice it with my classes that I was currently teaching. And at that time, I was teaching sophomore English and English as a second language. And yeah, they were great. They great guinea pigs. And then I went into the next school year, incorporating a lot of that into my day to day teaching. And what I realized over the course of that program is that I wanted to work more with students who are often not successful in the current school system, the traditional school system. And I wanted to work with students who were struggling behaviorally. And so I worked with my principal, and then we also have a department in it's more developed. Oh, I shouldn't say that. It's at all high schools in Rockford Public Schools, but the model is traditionally found in elementary and middle schools, but it's called MTSS, and it stands for multi-tiered systems of support. And that team was in its early couple years, and they were looking for someone to specifically work with students on behavior. And and that's what I wanted to do. So it worked out perfectly. So I joined that team, and that's where I still am. I'm my third year on that team, and it's been really interesting. Just from year to year, the role evolves, and due to this nature of the students and their needs, due to the climate of the building, but then also due to my comfortability in the role as well, and my willingness to get more creative with the interventions that I do with students. Prior to this year, I was mostly doing one-on-one interventions, but this year I'm trying to do more small groups. And I dabbled in that my first year in this role. I was working one-on-one with students so that I could try to get them to a point where they would feel comfortable participating in a yoga class. And that did happen about 2 or 3 times where we had a yoga class that was comprised of approximately 5 to 8 students. So yeah, this year I'm trying to really work on just allowing, creating an opportunity for students to work together, and to be vulnerable with one another as well. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. We're about a month or so into school, so got lots of time to keep playing around.
Sure, sure. Well, and I think, to being able to have yourself and other educators like you looking for, um, seeing what the needs are, seeing, doing that either formally or informally a needs assessment and seeing what's happening with the students, and then what can we do to make a difference for them, not
Yeah,
just make a difference for them to do, better on standardized testing, but how to help them be better equipped to just learn in general is kind of what I'm hearing you say.
for sure. And some of our students are in a place where they don't care to learn whatsoever, and it's not a fault of their own. They This is a behavior that they've learned to develop to survive. And one of the things that I work with them on is, well, one is just developing a relationship where they can trust me. They've been burned, or they feel like they've been burned by a lot of people. And so having meaningful, authentic relationships is absolutely key, especially teenagers. They sense phoniness immediately. And so being genuine and actually caring about them is like the first thing that needs to happen. And then in creating opportunities for them to feel safe too, because for a lot of different factors, they just have not felt safe. And if they are constantly in this survival mode, they may turn to things that are not the most healthy behaviors in order to survive. And like I said, this is not a fault of their own. This is a lot of factors at play here. And so, one of the most powerful strategies that I believe, and this not only in my work at East, but also that I really incorporate into the yoga classes at Rockford Barbell too, is breath work. Because if we can get people to realize that we always have this very powerful tool with us, and when we take those deep breaths, that allows an opportunity to tell, for our brain to tell our body that we are okay, that we are safe. And there's different ways to incorporate breath work into your life. So that's honestly the most powerful strategy that I incorporate with the youth that I work with, I would say.
Well, to your point, Mary, I think, we talk about this, all the time on the journey, and as well as when I'm counseling or if I'm teaching, this idea that we don't always have the ability to avoid or control, what is going on, in our circle, in our life. Um, but we do have the ability to control how we respond to it,
Yes.
and then being able to move that move away from that external locus of control to the internal locus of control, even if it's something, what appears to be small, though we know it's much greater impact about being able to control your breathing.
Yes,
And I think, being able to work with them to recognize that it sounds like something that they do automatically, but if they're always in fight or flight, like many people are, then their breathing is going to be affected by that,
yes.
and they won't even necessarily know that that they're in that shallow surface breathing aspect.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. And I think this is also important for the people that are working with youth too, to keep in mind and to practice because there are a lot of, uh, there's been different opportunities that I provide over the couple years to offer mindfulness strategies and practices to staff in the building and through Rockford Barbell offering the adult yoga classes over the summer. And I think it's not just our youth that can benefit from this as well. This is like a basic human practice that I think if we all were able to tap in more, I genuinely think the world would be a better place.
Yes, I agree. So Mary, tell us a little bit. How did you get involved with breath work? How did you get involved with doing uh with breath work, with yoga? Yeah, how did this all come about? Tell us a little bit about that story, and then
Sure, sure. I'll go a step even prior to that. I grew up in a lot of competitive sports and figure skating. I grew up um, pretty much until high school. I figure skated, and then growing up and in high school, I played travel softball. And then in college, I played D3 softball at Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin. So moving my body has always been something that has been a huge part of my life. And after college, I had a bit of an identity crisis because I was so used to just to train for the purpose of being in season. I would train year round, but it was always, to be in the best shape for the game. And so I then, after college, I did more CrossFit. I did CrossFit during high school, but excuse me, during college. But I actually joined a CrossFit gym here in Rockford, and then when the pandemic hit, my dad actually exposed me to Yoga with Adrian, which is a YouTube channel, and I've always liked yoga. I thought it was interesting, but I was at that time frustrated with the slower pace because I always wanted to go, 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 go. And to me at that time, a proper workout wasn't achieved if I wasn't sweating or lifting a certain amount. And so um oh so that was in 2020. Over the past 5 years, I've done a lot of work centered around what actually listening to my body means, and what a workout actually needs to be, and how it doesn't have to be super intense in order to be meaningful. And um and it's still something where I have to catch myself, where I'm thinking I'm not doing enough of a certain thing, but then I have to take a step back and think about, okay, what is my energy level at currently? And I have found that when I properly assess what my energy level is at, and I then match my movement to that level, then I feel tremendously better after the workout. versus if I don't do that, worst case scenario, I get hurt. But also like just feel um drained, and not a good type of drained where like, sometimes we feel tired after a good workout, but drained where I push myself too much where it then affects my energy throughout the rest of the day in a negative way. So yeah, in during the pandemic, I really started to incorporate yoga more into my life. And then when I did the yoga teacher training, I remember at the beginning of that program, I was like, it'll be so cool if someday I can get to a point where I can incorporate yoga every day into my life. And um, rather quickly, I did do that because I realized that yoga doesn't necessarily have to be about stepping on your yoga mat for 30, 60 minutes a day. Um, Yoga is really a philosophy, and there's 8 limbs of yoga. If you look at um, the roots of yoga, and asana, which is the movement part, is just one of those limbs. And breath work is another limb. And there's, all these different factors, including the way you show up in your daily interactions. So I realized that even if my day is busier and I'm not able to get my desired 30 to 60 minutes on the yoga mat, that's okay. If I'm at my desk at work and I take a few deep breaths just to reset, or as I'm walking from one place to the next and I'm paying attention to how my feet feel on the ground, if I am paying attention to the sensations of my body and trying to melt some of that tension away, that is yoga. And ultimately it's all about trying to connect to the present moment and listening to what your body needs. And um yeah, so that's a little bit of my journey.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you on multiple points that you were just talking about regarding that, it's our, I think from a standpoint of how do you define success, but being in that flow, being in that zone, being in that uh being in that mindfulness aspect of being present and recognizing that it's not about a destination and an outcome as much as it is about this process or this journey. And I think talking about mountain climbing is a good example of that. We think getting to the peak, getting to the summit is the point. Well, that's probably the part of the journey that you spend the least amount of time at.
Yeah,
It's the walk up, it's the walk down is much more it's the amount of time you stay on top may be anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes just because of the lack of oxygen and the altitude.
yeah.
Um, so it isn't as much about the outcome, but it is about, you know, that growth process of being able to recalculate and make those adjustments. So as you've now brought yoga to Rockford Barbell. So Rockford, as for any new listeners, Rockford Barbell is really about from 8 to 18-year olds, youth, boys and girls, students, and how to learn to regulate their own emotions, regulate their through regulating and becoming more mindful of movement. And weightlifting is one aspect of that, and yoga is another. So tell us a little bit about what's your goal with yoga and specifically working with this population in your after school program.
Sure, yeah. So, our yoga program is Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:30, and um, the yoga mission aligns parallel with the weightlifting mission in terms of incorporating mindful movement to teach students social emotional skills. So, when we are doing yoga, there's a class arc that I was taught in my Breathe for Change training. So typically what a class looks like is we'll settle in with 3 collective breaths, and each class has a theme. For example, breathe for compassion, breathe for gratitude, um, breathe for love. Anything of that sort. And after we settle in, we then will practice a breathwork strategy. At the beginning of the session, usually we just focus on teaching the youth what a deep breath actually is. That way they aren't doing that shallow, more fight or flight breathing, but really deepening that breath from the bottom of their belly. And then we'll move into the movement part of class. So they'll do yoga individually on their mat. I lead them through a sequence. And then after that, there's time for either a partner or a group yoga pose. For example, we do tree pose, holding on to each other's arms or upper backs. We'll do boat pose where one individual has their feet up and the other one has their other feet, and they're making a little tower together. And then after that, there's the visualization part of class where we practice meditation. And when it's the beginning of the class, or excuse me, beginning of the session, we usually have this be shorter, only a couple minutes, just because we're building students' capabilities to practice these skills too. And so I'm not going to have them start with a 10-minute meditation, because they're not at that level to really tap into that. So we start short with all these practices and then build that capability over the course of the 6-week session. And then after the visualization part of class, there's creative expression, which usually incorporates journaling. Each day they have a readiness score that they do that allows them to practice self-awareness. So using that notebook, they'll journal based on the prompts that I give them. And then after creative expression, there's relaxation, which is, if anyone's been to a traditional yoga class, this would be very similar to Shavasana at the end of yoga, where you're lying down on your back. And I'll usually guide them through more words to allow them to get to a point of relaxation. For example, we have a practice called Peaceful Place, where I guide them to think of a place where they feel absolutely safe or peace. And this could be a place that they've been before, or a place that they make up in their mind. And there's certain cues that I give them to feel like that they are in that place. And then we do a short closing activity. So that's the class arc that we follow. And through all of those different components of class, we practice things like self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, and relationship skills. We really believe that both in the yoga and weightlifting classes, that relationship skills are really important for youth to develop, because they're important for our whole lives. And so that's why we do the things like the partner and group poses. We'll have short discussions and whole class discussions. So those are all components that, or excuse me, skills that are built throughout the class and practiced throughout the class. And Rockford Barbell also believes that trauma-informed practices are extremely important as well. So throughout class, I'm constantly offering different variations to a pose or to different parts of class. That way students feel comfortable in their own bodies, because what feels good for me may be completely different than what feels good to you. And we also use props. So yoga blocks are something that the kids use, or are I should say invited to use. Some of them like to use them, some of them don't. But one way that they may use it is I always invite them when we're in a cross-legged seat at the beginning of class, that they are welcome to sit on a block or two in order to lift their hips a little bit more. And that can help someone feel way more comfortable in that cross-legged seat versus if they didn't have a block. So yeah, that that is what I hope to get out of the yoga class. The kids to have an opportunity to practice, especially self-awareness. I truly believe that if we don't have that foundational skill of self-awareness, that it's really hard to get to things like self-management and relationship skills. So for me, I think yoga is a beautiful tool to really hone on that skill.
Well, and I think that it just the way that you were explaining that in the class arc, right? That to being able to have that format, the students know that there's going to be a consistent structure to that arc, and so that they can then build on it for, over the 6 weeks, and then if they enjoy it, then they can sign up for another, another 6 weeks, and so I think it's that structure that allows, as you said, the safety, and then
Yeah,
allows the opportunity for that building and that growth as well. And and I think, just as we've talked about it, I know Nick, feels the same way, is that, it's if we're doing it in our own life and it's part of our own lifestyle, it's 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 natural for us to want to share what we've gotten out of it with other people. And so
yeah,
then it just becomes another extension of who we are and what we're doing. And so
yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
I feel very. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
So, okay. So, I feel very blessed that I have both the venue of East and Rockford Barbell just to work with students in all these different capabilities or capacities, I should say. And it doesn't feel like work sometimes. It's just having conversations about things that I love to talk about, and but then also encouraging and inviting students and youth to think about it as well. And some of them get pretty into it, and some of them don't, and so we shift a little bit, and that's okay too. So it's I think it's all about meeting someone where they're at and listening to them, um, and that's where I think the relationship skills play a part as well and are extremely crucial as well for our youth to practice as well, because not everyone is going to always see eye to eye or have the same interests, but we can still have a conversation and we can still learn from one another no matter what, if both of us bring a certain something to the table.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think being able to help our students, help the adults in our lives to be able to learn of how to navigate through that we can have a different perspective. But that different perspective doesn't necessarily mean that I have to give up my perspective, or I have to, you know, I don't need you to be wrong so I can be right.
For
And
sure.
being able to navigate through that, and recognize that I may learn something from someone who has a different perspective, and then being able to, like you said, practice that um through the exercises that you're doing in the class, as well as them seeing how that can play out just with interacting with their other people in the class, and then carrying that outside of the group. So
Definitely. Yeah. And we something that I just want to talk about too real quick is I think one cool difference between the yoga and the weightlifting is our yoga program has developed some really amazing relationships with different organizations in the community. For example, Nicholas Conservatory and Anderson Japanese Gardens, Rockford Dance Company, um, and we've incorporated these um, locations into our programming because we've noticed that giving the youth an opportunity to practice in nature has been really powerful, and the kids love it so much. They especially love Anderson Gardens and Nicholas Conservatory. Nicholas Conservatory, we are usually at in the colder months, so the winter, and it's such a great opportunity to be in nature while also not being freezing. So yeah, that's a beautiful space. And they every time I tell them we're going back to Anderson Gardens too, they get excited as well. So um, we've had the great opportunity to create these partnerships with different organizations in the area, and I've realized that's something that's important to me when being the director of this program, is just to tap into nature and give the youth the opportunity to be in these spaces, because sometimes they don't have that um, ability or access without our yoga class. So that's been a really fun development that we've incorporated over the past couple of years.
Nice. Yeah, I think those, especially those three community partners that you have, and then with the conservatory as well as Anderson Gardens, it's just being able to expose the students to that, and then they get kind of like an inside experience with that they can bring
Yeah.
back to their family and friends that may have never been to those places.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a family night tomorrow at Anderson Gardens, and we have a lot of families signed up, and I'm so excited. And it's a great opportunity for the kids to show their families all the different places we've been to over the course of the past 6 weeks, and they get to be the teacher and lead their loved ones around. And yeah, we're looking forward to tomorrow's family night at Anderson.
Nice. So, Mary, if someone was interested in having their student involved with the yoga program at Rockford Barbell, what's the best way to go about doing that, and what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. So if you go to Rockford Barbell's website, that is a place where you can register for yoga and or weightlifting classes. And there's also contact information if you have trouble with the registration or have more questions. You can reach out to our executive director. His name is Elliot Gannett, and he would be able to answer all those questions. He has a little bit more access to um, answering those questions just because he's full time. So he would be the best person to contact if you have any questions. And we have a new session starting in 2 weeks. So this is um, a great time to sign up for your child. And you would also be able to see the dates of upcoming sessions as well. So if this is not a good time, and we run in 6 week sessions. So if you know the next couple months is not a good time for your family for whatever reason, just know that we're always operating in 6 week sessions throughout the whole year. And we usually have 2 weeks in between the 6 week sessions. So that's a good opportunity for families to talk, and guardians to ask their students if they want to continue the programming. But yeah, Rockford Barbell's website has all the registration information.
Perfect. Well, Mary, I really appreciate your energy and your passion for being able to bring this to our community as well as to our youth, and being able to be at the ground level at East High School and helping the students out there. So, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, if anyone who was listening to Mary share about her passion utilizing yoga, and there may be a student that you may know, please share this episode and share rockfordbarbell.com. Is it .com or .org? I can't remember.
I think it's .org. I should know that. But if you if you Google Rockford Barbell, Rockford, Illinois, it comes up right away. Pretty sure it's rockfordbarbell.org.
Okay, perfect. And so if you go to rockfordbarbell.org or just Google Rockford Barbell, that information will pop up. And again, as always, thank you for being here, and I look forward to being with you next week.